Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of the Great Hall. Around her, 847 different species watched from their special seats. Some breathed air like humans. Others floated in water tanks. A few existed as clouds of gas that shimmered in the light. The Galactic Council had met in this place for over 1,000 years. Every important decision that affected the galaxy happened here. Trade agreements, peace treaties, and laws that governed billions of worlds all came from this room. Sarah had stood here many times before. For 50 years, she had spoken for humanity. She had followed every rule, attended every meeting, and filled out every form the Council required. She had been patient when other ambassadors took months to answer simple questions. She had been polite when they spent years arguing about things that should take minutes to decide. Today was different. Honored members of the Council, Sarah began. Her voice carried clearly through the translation devices that let every species understand her words. I come before you one final time as humanity's representative. The Veltar ambassador, a creature that looked like living crystal, made a sound that meant confusion. The gas cloud ethereals swirled faster in their containment fields. Even the ancient Eldarch, whose people had created the council, leaned forward on his walking stick. 3 weeks ago, Sarah continued, the Zephyrian Empire attacked our colony on New Perth. 5,000 civilians died in the first strike. Men, women, and children who had never harmed anyone. The Zephyrian ambassador stood up quickly. He was tall and proud, with scales that gleamed purple in the chamber's light. The humans expand into our ancient territories, he declared. We have every right to protect our space. Sarah did not look at him. She kept her eyes on the council speaker, the eldest of the Eldarch. The same day they bombed our homes, the Zephyrians filed a formal complaint with this council. They said we were the aggressors. They asked for you to force us to leave planets we had settled for 20 years. Murmurs filled the chamber. This was not unusual. Many species brought their fights to the council, hoping for favorable decisions. Your response, Sarah said, her voice growing harder, was to form a subcommittee. You scheduled hearings for next cycle. You suggested we enter mediation that could take years to complete. The Eldarch speaker tapped his staff on the floor. Ambassador Chen, proper procedures must be followed. Justice cannot be rushed. Justice? Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. While you form committees, more of our people die. This morning, the Zephyrians hit 2 more colonies. But I suppose we should wait for your subcommittee to study whether murder is still against galactic law. The chamber erupted. Dozens of species began talking at once. The translator system struggled to keep up with the noise. The speaker tapped his staff repeatedly until quiet returned. Ambassador, you are out of order, the speaker said. You are right, Sarah replied. We have been out of order for 50 years. We tried to be good members of this council. We followed your rules even when they made no sense. We waited for justice even when justice never came. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small device. With a press of a button, her words were broadcast not just to the council, but to every major communication network in the galaxy. Today, humanity officially withdraws from all galactic diplomatic frameworks, Sarah announced. We will no longer participate in your committees. We will not attend your hearings. We will not submit to your mediation. The silence that followed was complete. In 1,000 years, no species had ever simply left the council's authority. The Zephyrian ambassador was the first to speak. This is madness. Without the council's protection, they will be destroyed. Sarah smiled coldly. Protection? When have you ever protected us? When pirates raided our trade ships, you told us to file a complaint. When slavers took our people, you said the evidence was unclear. When the Corvin hegemony demanded tribute from our colonies, you suggested we negotiate. She turned to face the entire chamber. We are done talking. From this moment forward, we speak the only language you seem to understand. Action. The Veltar ambassador's crystal form flashed red. You cannot simply ignore galactic law. Watch us, Sarah said. The Eldarch speaker stood slowly. His ancient voice carried across the chamber. In 1,000 years, no species has chosen this path. Do you understand what you are doing? Without diplomacy, there is only chaos. Sarah's expression softened slightly. She had always respected the Eldarch. Unlike many council members, they genuinely tried to be fair. But even good intentions meant nothing when the system was broken. With respect, Speaker, we have lived in chaos for 50 years. Your diplomacy only helps those who abuse it. The Zephyrians bomb our cities, then hide behind your procedures. The Corvin hegemony enslaves entire planets, then claims diplomatic immunity when caught. Pirates attack our ships, then disappear into neutral zones where your authority means nothing. She walked toward the exit, then stopped and looked back. You want to know what we understand? We understand that a system that cannot protect the innocent is not worth preserving. We understand that justice delayed is justice denied. And we understand that sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to hit back. The chamber remained silent as she continued toward the door. Where will you go? The speaker called after her. Who will speak for humanity now? Sarah paused at the threshold. Our actions will speak for us, and I suggest you listen carefully because we will not repeat ourselves. She left the chamber and walked down the long corridor that led to the transport stations. Behind her, she could hear the explosion of voices as 847 species tried to understand what had just happened. In the human embassy, Sarah's assistant was already packing the last of their files. The ship is ready, Ambassador. Not Ambassador anymore, Sarah corrected. From now on, we have different work to do. As their ship lifted off from the council station, Sarah looked down at the massive structure that had governed the galaxy for a millennium. Soon, it would be just another space station orbiting an unremarkable star. The age of endless talking was over. The age of action had begun. News of humanity's withdrawal spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had never heard of humans suddenly found themselves discussing Earth's unprecedented decision. In the crystal cities of Veltar Prime, the ruling council met in emergency session. Their leader, a massive crystal formation called the Prime Shard, pulsed with confused colors. How does a species simply stop talking? The Prime Shard asked. It makes no sense. The Veltar were masters of information. They had spies in every government and agents in every major organization. But now they faced something new. Humans had always been easy to understand before. They talked too much, asked too many questions, and worried about things that did not matter. Simple creatures. Perhaps they will return when they realize their mistake, suggested the secondary shard. Without council protection, they cannot survive. On the gas worlds of the Ethereal Collective, similar conversations took place. The Ethereals existed as clouds of intelligent particles that could think as one mind or many. They had always found human diplomacy amusing. Humans argued with each other even when they agreed on something, but this silence was different, troubling. The most worried species was the Zephyrian Empire. In their great war rooms, Admiral Korthak studied maps of human space. The Empire had expected the humans to beg for council intervention after the first attacks. Instead, they had done something impossible. They had walked away. They are weak, Korthak told his officers. They run because they cannot fight us properly. Now we can take their colonies without council interference. The Admiral was wrong. 2 weeks after Sarah Chen left the council chamber, the first Zephyrian fleet prepared to attack the human mining world of Kepler Station. The planet had valuable resources and only light defenses. It should have been an easy victory. The fleet never reached its target. 5 Zephyrian warships simply vanished between one sensor sweep and the next. No distress signals, no wreckage, no evidence they had ever existed except for the worried families waiting for them to return home. Admiral Korthak ordered a larger fleet to investigate, 25 ships this time, including his best. Dreadnought. They found nothing. The first fleet was gone as if it had never been. Then the second fleet began to disappear too. It happened slowly at first. Ships reported technical problems and dropped out of formation. When the fleet tried to regroup, those ships could not be found. By the time Admiral Korthak's dreadnought reached Kepler Station, only 5 ships remained. The human mining station was still there, still operational, still defended by the same light patrol vessels that had been there before. But something was different. As Korthak's remaining ships approached, they received a simple message. Turn around. The Admiral was furious. Humans dared to give him orders. He commanded his ships to attack. Nothing happened. Weapons would not fire. Engines would not respond. Life support continued to function, but every other system on every Zephyrian ship had simply stopped working. Then the human patrol ships moved. They were small craft, Nothing that should threaten a dreadnought, but they moved with impossible precision, like dancers who had practiced the same routine for years. "Your crews are safe," came another message. "Your ships are intact. You can leave anytime you want, but your weapons will not function in human space, ever." Somehow, Admiral Korthak found his ships could move again, only away from the human station. He fled with the 5 ships he had left from a fleet of 30. Similar incidents began happening across the galaxy. The predatory Corvin hegemony learned this lesson in a more dramatic way. The Corvin were pirates who had grown into an empire. They raided weaker species and took what they wanted. The Council had never been able to stop them because they were clever about staying within the law. When they heard about humanity's withdrawal, they saw opportunity. Humans had several isolated research stations that would be easy targets. No Council protection meant no consequences. The Corvin warlord Grex personally led the attack on Research Station Alpha 7. The station studied new types of plants that could grow on dead worlds. Peaceful work done by scientists who had never harmed anyone. Grex's fleet surrounded the station and demanded surrender. The 30 humans aboard had no choice but to comply. They were taken prisoner, and the station was looted. Grex expected no response. Who would the humans complain to? They had rejected the Council's authority. The response came 3 days later, but not in any form Grex could have imagined. He woke up in his private chambers aboard his flagship to find a human woman sitting in his favorite chair. She was young, with dark hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple gray uniform with no rank markings. "Good morning, Warlord," she said in perfect Corvin. "We need to talk." Grex reached for the alarm button beside his bed. The woman shook her head. "No point. Your security systems think everything is normal. Your guards think you are asleep. Only you and I exist in this moment." "How did you get aboard my ship?" Grex demanded. His flagship was surrounded by other vessels. The nearest human territory was weeks away. "That is not the important question," the woman replied. "The important question is what happens next." She stood and moved to his desk. With one finger, she activated his personal computer. Files began appearing on the screen. Records of every crime the Corvin hegemony had committed. Evidence of every raid, every theft, every murder. Information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. "We know everything," she said simply. "Every ship you have stolen, every person you have enslaved, every world you have raided. We have been watching you for a very long time." Grex tried to stand but found he could not move. Not paralyzed, just unwilling to get up, as if his own body refused to threaten this calm human woman. "Our people from Research Station Alpha 7, she continued. "You will return them, unharmed. You will also return everything you took from our station." "And if I refuse?" Grex managed to ask. The woman smiled. It was not a cruel expression, but it was not kind either. "Then tomorrow morning, your entire command structure will wake up in Galactic Council custody, all of them, simultaneously, with complete evidence of their crimes conveniently provided to Council investigators." She moved toward his door. "You have 24 hours to comply. After that, we stop asking nicely." "Wait," Grex called. "What do you mean, stop asking nicely?" But she was gone. The door had never opened. The security systems showed no record of her presence, but the files were still on his computer, proving she had been real. 18 hours later, a Corvin transport ship arrived at the nearest human outpost. The 30 researchers from Alpha 7 were aboard, along with every piece of equipment that had been taken from their station. Warlord Grex never spoke publicly about what had happened, but word spread through the underworld anyway. The humans had done something impossible. They had reached into the heart of Corvin space and touched their most protected leader. If they could do that, what else could they do? Other species began to notice changes. The Benthic Collective, peaceful traders who had always been humanity's friends, found their merchant ships were never attacked anymore. Pirates who had plagued their trade routes for generations simply stopped operating. The archivists, scholarly beings who collected knowledge from across the galaxy, discovered that their research expeditions no longer needed armed escorts. Dangerous regions of space had somehow become safe. In the council chambers, the ancient Eldarch speaker met with his advisors. They brought reports from across the galaxy. Human space had gone silent. No diplomatic messages, no trade negotiations, no requests for assistance. But somehow, the galaxy was becoming more peaceful. "What are they doing?" asked the speaker's chief aide. The old Eldarch stared out at the stars. "Something we never learned how to do," he said quietly. "Something that does not require endless meetings and committees." "What is that?" "They are teaching the galaxy to behave." 6 months had passed since Sarah Chen walked out of the council chambers. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Eldarch speaker called an emergency session of the full council. Representatives from all 847 species gathered in the Great Chamber. The mood was different from their usual meetings. Instead of boredom or routine arguments, there was real fear. "The situation has become critical," the speaker announced. "We must address the human problem before it destroys everything we have built." The Veltar ambassador was the first to present evidence. Crystal formations on the chamber floor projected holographic displays showing star maps and statistical data. Piracy in sectors with human presence has dropped by 78%, the Veltar reported. Illegal slavery operations have decreased by 85%. Even minor crimes like smuggling have nearly vanished in these areas. Murmurs filled the chamber. Several species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "This sounds positive," said the representative from the peaceful Aquarian Federation. "Why are we treating it as a problem?" The Zephyrian ambassador stood up sharply. His purple scales had lost their usual gleam, and his eyes were wild with anger and fear. "Because they are doing it without authority, without law. They are making themselves the rulers of the galaxy." "Explain," the speaker commanded. Admiral Korthak, the Zephyrian military leader, stepped forward. His voice shook with barely controlled rage. "My fleets have lost over 200 ships, not destroyed, not captured, lost. They simply vanish without trace." The chamber fell silent. 200 ships was not a small number. The Zephyrian Empire had one of the largest militaries in the galaxy. "How is this possible?" asked the gas cloud ethereal representative. "We do not know," Korthak admitted. "Our ships approach human space or human allies. Then they stop existing. No wreckage, no distress signals, no survivors, nothing." The Corvin representative, a scarred being who spoke for the pirate empire, added his own testimony. 37 of our raid fleets have disbanded. Not defeated, disbanded. The crews simply refused to operate in sectors where humans might be present. "Cowardice," the Zephyrian spat. "No," the Corvin replied quietly. "Wisdom. We have learned what happens to those who threaten human interests." Dr. Kalin of the Archivists moved to the center of the chamber. The scholarly being was one of the most respected researchers in the galaxy. When she spoke, others listened. "I have spent these 6 months studying human activity," Dr. Kalin announced. "My findings are disturbing." She activated a complex holographic display that showed trade routes, communication networks, and political boundaries across the galaxy. "The humans are not acting randomly," she explained. "Every action follows a clear pattern, but it is a pattern we cannot understand because we think like diplomats. They think like—" She paused, struggling for the right word. "Like gardeners." "Gardeners?" The ethereal representative swirled in confusion. "They are pruning," Dr. Kalin continued, "removing elements they consider harmful while protecting and nurturing those they consider beneficial. But they are doing this across the entire galaxy simultaneously." The speaker leaned forward on his staff. "That would require resources and coordination beyond any single species." "Yes," Dr. Kalin agreed. "Which brings me to my most troubling discovery. Human space has become a complete void of information. We know nothing about what they are doing inside their borders." The Veltar ambassador's crystal form flashed with alarm colors. "Impossible. Our intelligence networks cover every civilized world." "Not anymore," Dr. Kalin replied. "Ships enter human space on legitimate business. They conduct their trade and return, but they bring back no useful information. It is as if—" She stopped, looking uncomfortable. "As if what?" the speaker demanded. "As if the humans are showing visitors exactly what they want them to see. Nothing more." The chamber erupted in worried conversations. The Veltar were the galaxy's master spies. If they could not penetrate human space, then humanity had achieved something that should have been impossible. The Aquarian representative raised a tentacle. "Perhaps we are approaching this incorrectly. The humans were our allies before. Have we tried simply asking them what they are doing?" "We tried," the Eldarch aide replied. We sent diplomatic messages to every human colony and outpost. The responses were all the same. He activated a recording. Sarah Chen's voice filled the chamber, calm and professional. Humanity has withdrawn from galactic diplomatic frameworks. We have nothing to discuss. That message has been sent to every government, every organization, and every individual who has attempted to contact them. The aide continued. They refuse all communication. The ethereal representative pulsed with worry. This isolation is unnatural. No species can survive completely alone. But they are not alone, Dr. Kalin pointed out. Trade continues. Human merchants still visit other worlds. The difference is that these interactions are purely commercial. No politics, no negotiations, no attempts to build relationships. They buy what they need and sell what they have, then leave. The Zephyrian admiral slammed his fist on his chair. This is intolerable. They cannot simply ignore galactic authority. What authority? Asked the Corvin representative quietly. They left. We have no power over those who reject our system. Then we force them back, Admiral Korthak declared. A unified military response. Show them that they need the Council's protection. Several species nodded in agreement. The idea was appealing. For 1,000 years, the Council had been the ultimate authority in the galaxy. No single species had ever successfully defied them, but others were less certain. The peaceful species remembered that humans had been their protectors long before this crisis began. The trading species knew that human markets were too valuable to risk losing. Dr. Kalin spoke again. Before we consider military action, we should understand what we would be fighting. My research suggests that humanity has undergone significant changes since their withdrawal. What kind of changes? The speaker asked. Technological advancement beyond our previous estimates, social unity that we have never observed in them before, and, most concerning, strategic thinking that operates on timescales we do not understand. Explain the last point, the speaker commanded. Dr. Kalin manipulated her holographic display. Look at the pattern of human actions over the past 6 months. Every intervention, every protection of allies, every response to aggression, when viewed individually, they seem reactive. But when viewed as a whole, the display changed to show lines connecting every human action across the galaxy. A complex web appeared, linking events that had seemed unrelated. They are not responding to current events, Dr. Kalin concluded. They are implementing a plan that was created before they withdrew from the Council. Everything we have seen was predicted and prepared for in advance. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans had not left the Council in anger or frustration. They had left because they already knew what they were going to do next. How long have they been planning this? The speaker asked quietly. Unknown, Dr. Kalin replied, but given the scope of coordination required, I would estimate years, possibly decades. The Zephyrian admiral's scales turned darker with rage. Then they never intended to be part of our system. They were always planning to replace it. Not replace, Dr. Kalin corrected. Ignore. They are not trying to rule the galaxy. They are simply removing elements they consider problematic while protecting those they consider valuable. The Aquarian representative made a sound of worry. And who decides what is problematic? Dr. Kalin's expression was grim. They do. The speaker stood slowly, his ancient joints creaking. Then we have only one option. If diplomacy is impossible and they will not respond to reason, we must show them that the galaxy will not accept their interference. Admiral Korthak smiled fiercely. A unified fleet. Every species contributes ships. Show these humans that they are not the only ones with teeth. The vote was closer than expected, but it passed. 60% of species agreed to contribute ships to a massive coalition fleet. The largest military force in galactic history would be assembled. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Dr. Kalin remained behind with the speaker. Are we making a mistake? The old Eldarch asked. Dr. Kalin looked at her data displays one more time. I fear we are about to discover just how much the humans have been holding back. The speaker nodded sadly. Then we will learn the hard way what happens when gardeners are forced to deal with weeds. Admiral Korthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the mighty dreadnought Divine Wrath, and looked upon the greatest armada ever assembled. 2,000 ships from 60 different species stretched across space in perfect formation. Zephyrian battleships flew alongside Veltar stealth vessels. Corvan raiders moved in formation with Aquarian defense platforms. Even the peaceful archivists had sent their few military ships. It had taken 3 months to gather this force. 3 months of careful planning, supply coordination, and political agreements. Every participating species had contributed their finest vessels and most experienced crews. Admiral, his communications officer, reported, "All fleet elements are in position. We are at the edge of human space." Korthak nodded with satisfaction. The humans had been quiet during the fleet's assembly. No protests, no threats, no attempts at negotiation. Just silence. "They must know we are here," said Commander Vrex, his second in command. "Our fleet is too large to hide." "Of course they know," Korthak replied. "They are afraid. Soon they will realize their mistake and beg to return to the Council." The Admiral was wrong about many things, but he was right about one. The humans definitely knew they were there. "Sir," the sensor operator announced. Single vessel approaching from human space. On the main screen, a small ship appeared. It was clearly human in design, but nothing impressive. A simple cruiser that might carry a few hundred crew members. Compared to the Divine Wrath, which was over 5 kilometers long, it looked like a toy. "One ship," Commander Vrex laughed. "They send one ship against our entire fleet." The human vessel stopped at exactly the boundary between human space and neutral territory. A communication signal came through on standard diplomatic frequencies. "Coalition fleet." The voice was calm and professional. "This is Captain Martinez of the UNS Reasonable Discussion. You are requested to maintain your current position while we resolve this situation." The bridge crew burst into laughter. The name of the human ship seemed particularly amusing. Admiral Korthak activated his communication system. "Human vessel, you are addressing the largest military force in galactic history. I am Admiral Korthak of the Zephyrian Empire, commanding over 2,000 warships. I demand that you surrender immediately." "Admiral," Captain Martinez replied, "we understand your position. However, we cannot comply with your demand. Please maintain your current position." Korthak's scales flushed deep purple with anger. "You dare refuse? You are outnumbered 2,000 to 1. "We are aware of the numbers, Admiral. Please remain where you are." The Zephyrian Admiral looked around his bridge. His officers were waiting for orders. Representatives from other species were monitoring the conversation from their own ships. This human arrogance could not be tolerated. "All ships," Korthak commanded on the fleet frequency, "advance into human space. Show them what happens to those who defy galactic authority." The massive fleet began to move forward. 2,000 ships of every size and design, from small fighters to massive battleships, crossed into human territory. That was when everything changed. "Admiral," his sensor operator called out in a confused voice, "we are receiving data transmissions." "From where?" "From our own ships, sir. Every vessel in the fleet is broadcasting technical specifications." Korthak frowned. "What do you mean?" Before the sensor operator could answer, every screen on the Divine Wrath's bridge lit up with information. Detailed blueprints appeared showing the exact layout of their ship. Engineering diagrams revealed every power conduit, every structural weakness, every backup system. But this was not just information about the Divine Wrath. Similar data was appearing for every ship in the fleet simultaneously. "Sir," the communications officer reported with a trembling voice, "every vessel is reporting the same thing. Someone is broadcasting their complete technical specifications." Commander Vrex stared at the displays in shock. "These are classified designs. How could the humans have this information?" Captain Martinez's voice returned, still perfectly calm. "Admiral Korthak, you are now viewing complete technical documentation for every ship in your fleet. This includes structural weaknesses, software vulnerabilities, and system backdoors that were unknown even to your own engineers." The bridge fell silent except for the humming of computers processing the massive data stream. "We could have destroyed your entire fleet 17 different ways before you entered our space." The human captain continued, "We could do it now with a single command, but we will not because, unlike some, we do not mistake restraint for weakness." Admiral Korthak found his voice. "You are bluffing. No species has that kind of information about our ships." "Perhaps a demonstration would be helpful," Captain Martinez replied. What happened next would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. Starting with the smallest ships and working up to the largest, systems began failing throughout the Coalition fleet. Not dangerous failures that would hurt anyone. Carefully controlled malfunctions that sent a very clear message. Lights on Corvin. Raiders began flashing in patterns that spelled out mathematical equations in their native language. Environmental controls on Aquarian ships created temperature fluctuations that matched the orbital periods of their home system's moons. On Veltar stealth vessels, cloaking devices activated and deactivated in sequences that played their species' traditional greeting songs. Ethereal gas cloud ships found their containment fields pulsing in rhythms that matched their cultural poetry. Each malfunction was harmless, but impossible to ignore. More importantly, each one demonstrated precise knowledge of systems that should have been completely secure. "This is impossible," Commander Vrex whispered. "These systems are not connected to external networks. They cannot be hacked." Admiral Korthok watched in horror as his own ship's weapon systems powered down and restarted in a pattern that matched the mathematical constants of Zephyr Prime's gravitational field. Someone was playing with the most secure systems on his flagship like a child with toys. "How?" he demanded over the communication channel. "Admiral," Captain Martinez responded, "your species has been part of galactic civilization for over 3,000 years. In that time, you have purchased technology, hired engineers, and recruited workers from dozens of other species. You have never wondered where all that knowledge went after the transactions were complete." The implication hit Korthak like a physical blow. Every ship in the fleet contained components from multiple species. Every computer system used software that had been updated countless times. Every piece of technology had been touched by beings from across the galaxy, and humans had been part of that galaxy for 50 years. "You have been watching us," Korthak said. "We have been learning from you," Martinez corrected. "Every trade agreement taught us about your economics. Every technology transfer showed us your capabilities. Every diplomatic meeting revealed your strategies and weaknesses." Commander Vrex turned to his admiral. "Sir, we should retreat. This is not a battle we can win." But Korthak's pride would not let him back down. "All ships prepare for coordinated attack. They cannot control 2,000 vessels simultaneously." He was wrong again. Every weapon system in the fleet powered down at exactly the same moment. Not just the main guns, but every defensive system, every missile launcher, every energy cannon. 2,000 warships became 2,000 pieces of floating metal in the space of a heartbeat. "Your crews are safe," Captain Martinez announced. "Your ships are intact. Life support and navigation systems remain fully functional. You may leave whenever you choose." Admiral Korthak tried to activate his weapons. Nothing happened. He tried to contact his engine room. The communications worked, but his engineers reported that weapon systems would not respond to any commands. However, the human captain continued, "Your weapons will never function in human space again. Consider this a permanent modification to your vessels." Ships throughout the fleet began reporting the same thing. Their weapons were simply gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, just non-functional. "This is an act of war," Korthak raged. "No, Admiral," Martinez replied patiently. "An act of war would have been destroying your fleet when it entered our territory without permission. This is an act of mercy." The massive Coalition fleet hung in space, powerless and humiliated. 2,000 ships that had been the pride of their respective species were now harmless tourist vessels. "You have 30 minutes to leave human space," Captain Martinez announced. "After that, we will be forced to escort you to the border. I do not think you would find that experience pleasant." One by one, ships began to turn away from human territory. Proud warships that had come to enforce galactic authority fled like frightened children. Admiral Korthak was among the last to retreat. As his ship turned away, he sent one final message to the human captain. "This is not over." "Yes, Admiral," Captain Martinez replied sadly. "It is." The largest military force in galactic history limped back to Council space, defeated by a single human cruiser that had never fired a shot. Behind them, the UNS Reasonable Discussion remained at the border, a quiet reminder that some conversations were more powerful than all the weapons in the galaxy. 1 year after the Coalition fleet's humiliation, the galaxy looked very different. In the great council chambers, the Eldark speaker sat alone in the massive hall that had once held representatives from 847 species. Now, only about 300 attended regular sessions. The others had found more important things to do. Dr. Kalin of the Archivists entered the chamber carrying her latest report. The elderly scholar looked tired but not unhappy. "Speaker," she said, settling into her usual seat, "I have completed my analysis of the changes over the past year." The ancient Eldarch gestured for her to continue. These private briefings had become their routine since the fleet disaster. "Galactic crime has decreased by 94%, Dr. Kalin reported, not just in human space or areas under their protection, everywhere. She activated a holographic display that showed crime statistics across the galaxy. The numbers were staggering. Piracy has virtually ceased to exist. The few remaining pirate groups operate only in remote areas and avoid any target that might have human connections. Slavery operations have shut down completely. Even minor crimes like smuggling and fraud have dropped to almost nothing." The speaker nodded slowly. He had heard similar reports from other sources. What about the aggressive species, the Zephyrians, the Corvin? "The Zephyrian Empire has become remarkably peaceful," Dr. Kalin replied, with something that might have been amusement. "They have not launched a single aggressive action since the fleet incident. Admiral Korthak was quietly retired and replaced with someone more interested in internal development than conquest. And the Corvin hegemony. They have transformed into a legitimate trading confederation. Warlord Grex now calls himself Trade Administrator Grex and focuses on commercial ventures rather than raiding." Dr. Kalin manipulated her display to show economic data. Trade has increased by 60% across all sectors. Peaceful species report the safest trade routes in galactic history. The Benthic Collective and Aquarian Federation are experiencing unprecedented prosperity. The speaker was quiet for a long moment. "It sounds like paradise." "In many ways, it is," Dr. Kalin agreed. "But it troubles some of our members. They feel that order without authority is dangerous." "Because they are not the ones providing the order," the speaker said with ancient wisdom. "What about human space itself? Have we learned anything new?" Dr. Kalin's expression became more serious. "Some merchants who trade with human colonies report significant technological advancement. Ships that were considered state-of-the-art a year ago now seem primitive compared to human vessels. But the humans are not sharing this technology, even with their closest allies." "Concerning," the speaker mused. "Perhaps," Dr. Kalin replied, "but they are also not using it aggressively. Their actions remain focused on maintaining stability rather than expansion or conquest." She brought up a new display showing shipping routes and trade patterns. "However, there have been some unusual developments. 3 previously unknown human colonies have established trade relationships with other species. These colonies appear to have existed for decades but were never mentioned in any human diplomatic communications." The speaker leaned forward. "Hidden colonies." "More likely contingency plans," Dr. Kalin suggested. "I believe the humans have been preparing for their withdrawal from galactic politics for much longer than we realized, possibly since they first joined the Council 50 years ago." The implications were staggering. It meant that humanity had never truly been part of the galactic community. They had been studying it, learning from it, but always planning to eventually go their own way. "Have they achieved their goals?" the speaker asked. Before Dr. Kalin could answer, an aide entered the chamber. "Speaker, forgive the interruption, but we have received a communication from human space." Both the speaker and Dr. Kalin looked surprised. It was the first official message from humanity in over a year. "Who sent it?" the speaker asked. "Someone identified as the Galactic Coordinator for Human Affairs," the aide replied. "She requests a private meeting with you." 2 days later, Sarah Chen stood once again in the council chambers, but everything was different this time. She wore a simple gray uniform with no rank markings or decorations. Her title was new, her authority unclear. The speaker had chosen to meet her alone rather than convene a full session. After the fleet disaster, many species were afraid of any contact with humans. "Ambassador Chen," the speaker began, then corrected himself. "I apologize. What should I call you now?" "Sarah is fine," she replied with a slight smile. "I'm no longer an ambassador to anyone. My role now is coordination." "Coordination of what?" Sarah gestured to the empty seats around them. "The galaxy has become quieter since we last spoke. fewer conflicts requiring council intervention, fewer emergency sessions, fewer urgent decisions needed. You mean fewer problems, the speaker said. I mean fewer people creating problems, Sarah corrected. The difference is important. The Eldarch studied her with eyes that had seen millennia of galactic politics. What do you want, Sarah? To talk, to explain, and to offer something. She activated a small device that projected a holographic display, similar to Dr. Kalen's reports, but far more detailed. For 50 years, my people participated in your system, Sarah began. We followed your laws, attended your meetings, and tried to work within your framework. But we also watched and learned. The display showed patterns of behavior across hundreds of species and thousands of years. We discovered that your system has a fundamental flaw, Sarah continued. It treats all conflicts as problems to be solved through discussion. But some conflicts exist because certain individuals or groups benefit from creating chaos. For them, endless negotiation is not a solution. It is a shield. The speaker nodded slowly. This was not a new observation, but no one had ever found a way to address it. So we developed a different approach, Sarah explained. Instead of trying to change the behavior of problem actors through negotiation, we simply made it impossible for them to continue their harmful activities. By force, the speaker said. By removing their capability to cause harm, Sarah corrected. Warlord Grek still commands his fleet, but his ships can no longer function as weapons of war. Admiral Korthak still serves his empire, but he cannot use military force against peaceful neighbors. We have not changed their minds. We have simply removed their ability to act on their worst impulses. The speaker was quiet for a long time. And you do this without authority, without law, without consent. We do this without permission, Sarah agreed. Just as cancer operates without permission from the body it destroys. You compare other species to cancer? Sarah's expression softened. I compare harmful behavior to cancer. Most individuals and most species are capable of peaceful coexistence. But a small percentage will always choose to take what they want through violence. Your system cannot handle these exceptions because it assumes everyone acts in good faith. She modified her display to show current galactic conditions. Our approach is simpler. We allow peaceful species to flourish while preventing harmful ones from causing damage. We do not rule. We do not govern. We simply maintain the garden. And who decides what counts as harmful? The speaker asked the crucial question. We do, Sarah admitted. Just as gardeners decide what counts as a weed. That is tyranny. That is responsibility, Sarah replied calmly. Your system places the burden of proof on victims. They must convince you that they have been harmed, then wait for you to convince the perpetrator to stop. Our system places the burden on those who would cause harm. They must prove they can coexist peacefully, or we remove their ability to do otherwise. The speaker stood and walked to the great windows that looked out on the galaxy. What are you offering me, Sarah? Acknowledgement, she replied. For 1,000 years, the Galactic Council has tried to bring order to chaos through discussion and compromise. That approach works well for most disputes between reasonable beings. We are not here to replace your system. She joined him at the window. We are here to handle the cases your system cannot address. The predators who hide behind diplomatic immunity. The warlords who see negotiation as weakness. The criminals who exploit legal protections to continue harming others. A partnership, the speaker asked. A division of labor, Sarah suggested. You continue to govern those who wish to be governed. We will ensure that those who reject civilization cannot harm those who embrace it. The ancient Eldarsh was quiet for a long time, looking out at stars that had become more peaceful in the past year. Will you accept oversight? He finally asked. Some form of accountability? Sarah smiled sadly. To whom? You represent species that choose to participate in galactic civilization. We represent those who choose to opt out. There is no authority above us except the results of our actions. And if you make mistakes, if you harm the innocent, then we will face the consequences, just as you do when your committees fail to prevent atrocities. Sarah turned to face him directly. But our mistakes affect individual actors. Your mistakes affect entire worlds. The speaker returned to his seat. What happens now? Now you return to the work you do best, Sarah replied. Governance, law, diplomacy, and civilization. The council continues to serve those who believe in justice through discussion. She moved toward the exit, then paused. And we continue our work in the shadows. ensuring that the garden you are trying to grow has room to flourish. As Sarah left the chamber, the speaker remained at the window. Outside, ships moved between the stars on peaceful missions of trade and exploration. Pirates no longer threatened merchant vessels. Warlords no longer conquered their neighbors. Slavers no longer stole children from their families. The galaxy had not become perfect, but it had become safe for those who chose peace. 6 months later, Dr. Kalin published her final report on the human situation. Its conclusion was simple. Humanity has not abandoned diplomacy. They have transcended its limitations. They represent what every civilization secretly wishes their government could become: the adult in the room. They do not need to threaten because their capability is assumed. They do not need to negotiate because their position is so strong that others negotiate with themselves. In her small office overlooking Earth's Pacific Ocean, Sarah Chen read Dr. Kalin's report while monitoring peaceful trade negotiations between the Veltar and Benthic Collective. Both species were discussing mineral rights with careful attention to environmental protection and fair pricing. No threats were needed. No ultimatums were issued. Both sides understood that someone was watching who cared deeply about fairness and had the ability to enforce it. The garden was growing well.